Hello, Happy New Year. Hope you're well. Hope you had a good Christmas. Hope you had a good New Year's Eve and a good New Year's party or whatever you did. You might have stayed in your pajamas and watched telly, and that's all. Well, I didn't. I lie. We was going to go out, and we had all plans to go out with my husband, but I got myself a new game. So I was sitting there playing that till 7:30 in the evening, and before I knew it, it was way too late to be doing because we hadn't even had dinner. So we ended up staying in and watching telly. But we did watch Squid Game, so that was all good. Anyway, hope you had a good Christmas. Hope you had some good presents and you gave some good gifts and all of that stuff. I got some good gifts. I need to show you just a couple because I love them. Like this one. How cool is that? It's cool, and it's if you are a fan of American Werewolf in London, you'll know that this is the sign from the pub, and I just love it. It's going to go on my wall somewhere. So that's one thing I got. I got quite a few things. I was quite spoiled. But another thing I got, which was really cool, I got a couple of nice ornaments, but this one, look at him. Look, he's sitting on a cut of books because that's just totally me with the raven. And I loved it. I got a few things. Like I say, I got quite spoiled. So anyway, enough of that. Um, today's video. Today's video is about urban legends, and I love urban legends. I know a lot of you like urban legends because in my last video I did on urban legends, it got good response. So I thought what I'm going to do is I'm going to include the urban legends into my sort of set of episodes. So yeah, this is what I'm doing today, urban legends. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to shut up and we'll get on and enjoy. See you on the other side. Date night. One summer evening, a teenage girl who lived in a remote English village was picked up by a boy for their second date. They were driving through the countryside when he mentioned that they were running out of petrol, and therefore they might not make it home. She thought he was joking, but then she didn't find it particularly funny, especially when the car spluttered to a halt under an old oak tree. They really had run out of fuel. They both glanced at their mobile phones, but neither could get a signal in such an isolated spot. So maybe we'll just have to stay here until morning, he suggested. This did not go down well with his date. So he told her to stay in the car and lock the doors while he went looking for help. The village was only a few miles back the other way, and there was an old-fashioned telephone box in case his phone didn't work. So the girl was understandably angry at her date for being useless and managing to run out of fuel, leaving her stranded in the middle of nowhere. But she settled down to wait for his return. It was too quiet for her liking, with the only sound being of the wind. So she turned on the radio to keep herself company. A news was on, and a bulletin was being read out, but the reception was really poor. So she put on a CD instead. An hour passed, then two, and then she started to get worried, wondering if he'd abandoned her on the side of the road. Maybe he'd been hit by a car on the dark country roads. She had heard of such accidents happening before. Then the car battery died and the music stopped. She cursed and slammed the dashboard. Suddenly she heard a thump, followed by a scratching or a clapping sound on the roof of the car. She told herself that it was probably a tree branch, because it was a windy night after all. But it was a loud noise, so she kept still and didn't make a sound. The noises continued and her imagination began to play tricks on her. Was someone out there? Her fear continued to grow, but she then opened the door to escape. Just when she couldn't bear it any longer, flashing blue lights lit up the car and she breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that her date must have come back with some help. The car stopped and the policeman walked slowly towards her. There was no sign of the boy. The officer shined his torch through the window and beckoned her out of the car. "You're safe, but keep your eyes down and don't look back at the car," he instructed. Confused, the girl asked the policeman if he'd seen her date. "There's time for that later," came the reply. She opened the police car door, but she couldn't resist a quick look back. And what she saw made her freeze in terror. The boy was hanging upside down from the oak tree, lit up by the flashing lights, swaying in the wind. His bloodied head was knocking on the car and his fingernails were scraping on the roof. "Didn't you listen to the radio?" said the policeman. "A murderer has escaped from the mental hospital in town." A school bus. Several decades ago, an odd story appeared on a local newspaper in the rural region of Wales. On the last day of term, a school bus taking children home was making its usual crossing over the railway line that ran up the mountain. The driver never liked taking the children over the crossing, but he had done it hundreds of times without any incidents. However, this time something went wrong, and the bus stopped right in the middle of the tracks. As the driver frantically tried to restart the engine, his worst nightmare became true. He heard a train sounding its horn in the distance. Within seconds, a heavy goods vehicle was looming large in the window. His first instinct was to save the children, so he leapt from the bus and smashed open the emergency exit. The last thing he heard was a terrible noise as the locomotive's brakes screeched in vain, and the children screamed as they jumped off the bus. The next thing he saw was the train driver above him, shielding his eyes as he awaited the inevitable. The train obliterated the bus, but by some miracle, only the bus driver lost his life. Over time, the small mining community slowly forgot about the accident until a recent story appeared in the same paper. It reported that an elderly man, a retired teacher, was driving over the same railway crossing when his car was stalled on the tracks. The alarm began to sound and his panic grew as he fumbled with his seatbelt. Just as he opened the door, the guard rails lowered behind him. He felt the car shift as though it was being lifted up from underneath. The next thing he knew, the train was thundering past behind him, so close that it rocked his car. He was so shaken that he had got out of his vehicle and called his wife to drive him home. Which is when he checked the back of his car for damage, the train had missed by a foot. It was also at that moment that he noticed the marks on the boot of his car. There were bloody handprints. The man looked around in panic, but there was no one else in sight. The crying baby. A woman was working late in her office in the city when she was interrupted by a strange noise coming from outside her window. As it got louder, she recognised the unmistakable sound of a baby crying. An unusual noise at that time of the night in that part of the town, where there were very few houses. She looked out the window and couldn't see anything, but the crying just continued, and it sounded almost as if it was inside the building. So she checked downstairs, where the noise was so loud that it could only have been coming from right outside the front door. She put her hand on the door handle, but despite all her instincts telling her to help the baby, something stopped her from opening it. Instead, she called the police, described the situation, asking them if they knew anything about a missing baby. She didn't get the answers she expected, as a police officer told her not to open the door under any circumstances, move away from all the windows and wait for help to arrive. The woman took this to mean that the missing child had indeed been reported and put the phone down. She moved away from the windows and waited, but the crying continued to get louder, and she began to wonder why she should wait for the police. After all, they could take hours to arrive, and the baby might need urgent medical attention. It must be getting cold out there. So she decided that she would bring the poor child inside and then wait for the police. So she opened the door, she stepped out onto the street. The crying stopped, but because she could see no signs of any baby. The next sound she heard were her own screams. When the police finally arrived, they found her lifeless body on the street. Her throat had been slashed. If she stayed on the phone long enough, the police officer would have had time to explain that there was a serial killer on the loose in town who was luring women outside at night with the recorded sound of a baby crying. Dude, where's my car? One day in 1978, a group of children in Los Angeles were digging in their garden, perhaps hoping to strike lucky and find a coin or a piece of discarded jewellery, or maybe an old toy car, when their shovels hit something very big and very hard. When they scraped away the dirt, they saw what appeared to be an unmistakable roof of a car. Quite what they were expecting to find in their suburban garden. The boys contacted the police, and by the time the authorities had roped off the area and carefully excavated the hole, they realised that it wasn't just the roof, it was the whole car. And not just any car, but a 1974 Ferrari Dino 246 GTS, which was in reasonable condition considering that it spent the last few years in the ground. It naturally crossed the minds of the investigating officers that this might be an elaborate way of hiding bodies or drugs. But the car was empty. It had been crudely sealed with sheets and tape on the doors, so the burial seemed to be intentional. But who had left it there, and why? The car was estimated to be worth around $20,000, which is over $70,000 today. It still bore the vehicle identification number, which is unusual for thieves to leave intact, so authorities were able to track down the last owner. He had reported stolen off the street 4 years earlier, when he and his wife were having dinner in a restaurant. The car wasn't found, for obvious reasons, and he eventually received a large insurance payout. Now, none of the locals in the kids' neighbourhood remembered anybody buying a Ferrari at the time, and you'd think someone would have noticed it. As one of the investigating officers remarked, it's not like planting cabbages. Living in the house knew nothing of the buried treasure, nor did the current occupants, who had only moved in the house for a few months previously. Was it an insurance fraud? Had the car owner decided he couldn't afford to run the Ferrari, so he planted the vehicle underground and claimed on the insurance? Or had some thieves come up with an ingenious method of hiding loot from the police? The recovered car now belonged to the insurers, who put it up for auction at less than half its value. It was bought and eventually restored by a mechanic who finished the car with registration dug up. Similar vehicles today are worth $400,000. So why was the car buried? The rumour was that the owner hired a couple of career criminals to steal the Ferrari, asking them to dump it in the ocean so that he could collect the insurance premium. When the crooks saw what they had on their hands, however, they decided to keep it for themselves, hiding the car underneath the yard, of an unsuspecting householder and planning to come back for it later. Thieves never were caught, but it's nice to imagine that they eventually returned with shovels to the spot, only to find it gone. Neighbourhood Watch. Have you ever wondered whether your neighbours are up to something, like digging in the garden late at night, asking you to move suspiciously heavy rugs? In 1984, a man was asked by his neighbour, a young woman, to help her lift some heavy old carpet roll out of her basement. He didn't think much of it. He noted that it was old and bulky, but merely assumed that it might contain several carpets rolled up together. The woman also enlisted the help of her 3 young children to help lug the rug onto the landing, where she told the helpful neighbour that she would take care of it from there. She was later convicted of her husband's murder, although she claimed that she had accidentally shot him in the head by accident. She had hidden the body in a roll of carpet in the basement before burying him in the shallow grave in the backyard. The kind neighbour told reporters that he used to carry out favours regularly for others living nearby, but that he would no longer do so. He said, "I don't carry no more carpets." That's not funny. It was a week before Halloween, and towns across America were being decorated with pumpkins, witches' hats, and spiders' webs, ready for the parties to come. Some householders went further than others, hanging skeletons from windows and even hoisting dummies mocked as corpses on trees and garages, or protruding from car boots. Some locals complained that such decorations were tasteless and brought the neighbourhood down, while some were even scared enough to call the police. A few days before Halloween, a frightening figure appeared overnight hanging from a tree near a busy road. Most of the people who drove past weren't that shocked. Nobody made any calls to 911, not even a couple of days at least. Somebody walking past the decoration thought it looked a little too realistic up close, and upon closer inspection discovered why. It was the real dead body of a woman who had hanged herself. Similarly, in another town, a man had shot himself in the head on his balcony and lay undisturbed for several days after neighbours mistook his lifeless body for an elaborate Halloween decoration. More recently, people in an Ohio neighbourhood were shocked when construction workers realised that a dummy hanging on a fence was not, as they assumed, a stupid Halloween prank, but it was the body of a murdered woman. So, next time you see a gruesome Halloween setup, you might want to check whether it's real, or maybe you won't. Sorry for the wobbling. I see that camera's wobbling. It's because I got it on a bendy sort of stand thingy. It wobbles. Anyway, it should stop in there. Hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you learned some new urban legends if you hadn't heard of all of those, because I hadn't heard of all of them when I did the video, so I hope you learned something new too and you enjoyed it. Also, one of the things I really want to say is a huge thank you to anybody of you that any one of you that's new here, that's come and joined me over here. I appreciate it. I've had quite a few new subscribers to my YouTube channel and I really appreciate it. I just hope I can live up to expectations, to be fair. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying so far and I hope you stick with me. So, one other thing I wanted to say was, I'm not sure if you're aware, but on my website, I've got a website which you'll find a link on my channel. I've got Linktree and it's got all of my links on. And so, yeah, on my website, I've got a few things for sale in my shop, merchandise type stuff, all things that I've designed, made myself. I'm just going to show you a couple of things that I've got, which I'm going to be putting on my website. Now, these things I've made previously, but I haven't got around to putting them on my site yet, but I will be. So, firstly, keyrings. Now, these ones I made a little while back, but I got like a random few donuts, random few different types of things I've made, like a hamburger, just random stuff. So I'm going to be putting those on my website if you're interested. And I've also got t-shirts and I've got some cushions I'll be adding some more of. I've got vinyl stickers. Go and have a look, because you never know, you might find something that it might sort of catch your eye. And I will be adding some new stuff as well, because of Christmas and everything. I just haven't had time to sit down and upload. I've got lots of things that I've done. I just haven't had time to upload them all yet. So bear with me, I will be uploading them. But yeah, go and have a little look, because you never know, you might find something on there that you might like. And I appreciate it if you do like anything that I've made. So yeah. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling. Hope you have a nice weekend and, well, nice rest of your week and weekend and whatever, all that stuff. And I'll see you on my next video. So Take care of yourselves and keep smiling. Bye bye.